Hello, good morning. Linda Curry here, author, teacher, speaker, and I am here today to simplify health and nutrition. I want to talk to you today about a docu-series that Dr. Mark Hyman put together on brain health. Now, I found this docu-series fascinating with a wealth of information included in it, with lots of interviews with functional medicine doctors and health practitioners. And they talked a lot about things that maybe we've heard before, things like diet and sleep and exercise and having a mindfulness practice, stress release, constantly learning. All of these things are great for brain health, as well as things like a sense of connection with your community, with your loved ones, etc. But there's one aspect of this docu-series that I wanted to hone in on, something that I really took notice. And that is the connection of our brain to our gut. So a little bit about the brain. There's this thing called the blood-brain barrier that protects the brain. So if you get an infection or you get a virus, for instance, it won't pass through this blood-brain barrier and infect the brain. However, because of all the dementia and Alzheimer's, they're finding that people have a lot of inflammation in the brain and plaque buildup, and that these infections and viruses are going into the brain. And they determined that there was a big connection between this blood-brain barrier and your gut lining. So let's go down to the gut now and talk a little bit about that and then put the connection together. So the gut lining protects us as well. And this might be referred to as your gut flora, the good and bad bacteria balance. Taking things like probiotics and things can help the good bacteria. The bad bacteria is going to be fueled by sugar and refined carbohydrates and things like that, or yeast in the body. So we have this gut lining that protects us. About 70 to 80% of your immune system is actually in this gut lining. So that is a good thing. However, so many gut issues today are realizing that we have permeability in this gut lining. The lining gets thinned out from things like sugar and refined carbs, of course, but also things like overuse of antibiotics. Keep in mind, antibiotics, when they're taken, they strip out all the good bacteria in your gut. And that is a really bad thing because we build up this good bacteria, these cultures inside the gut from the time that you're born. You're getting it from your mother. And antibiotics, when we overuse them, we're just stripping that gut lining, and we have to rebuild that over and over again. And it's thought that many of those strains of bacteria cannot be rebuilt up, especially with the limited diets that we have today. So we really need to pay special attention to this gut lining, because when it gets weak, we can get things like leaky gut, where food particles actually leave the intestine and go into the bloodstream. Your immune system sees this as foreign. It's going to attack these food particles, and then it learns to attack them inside the gut as well. And that's where food allergies and sensitivities can come into play. So keeping a good gut lining is really important to overall health. But I realized from this docu-series that it is also critical to this blood-brain barrier. So if our gut lining is weak and breaks down, so does the blood-brain barrier. And then what happens is you can get a sinus infection or a cold sore or tonsillitis, and these infections or viruses can actually go into the brain. Now this is a really serious situation, because then you're going to build up a lot of inflammation and plaque in the brain, which of course is seen in dementia and Alzheimer's patients, which is what we want to prevent. So instead of really focusing on the brain for brain health, if we focus on the gut, which is really where health starts, is the health of the gut and the gut lining. So much is going back to the gut that we need to take care of it. We need to strip out these processed foods that are loaded with genetically modified ingredients, chemicals, toxins. All of these things are creating a weak gut lining. Now, I mentioned antibiotics. I want to have antibiotics available to me if something serious happens. a flesh-eating bacteria or something that cannot be stopped by my own immune system. If you get a sinus infection, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, these things can actually boost your immune system and kill this infection. Your immune system should be strong enough to take care of these things. We shouldn't be taking antibiotics for a common cold or flu or a common infection. It's killing your gut bacteria every single time, and the long-term effects are really serious. So I want people to really understand this. So, other things that we can do, of course, is making sure you get good sleep. When we sleep at night, your brain is actually cleansed of these proteins, and when you don't get enough sleep, your brain doesn't properly cleanse and a buildup of this inflammation happens. Other things that can cause a weak gut lining, things like parasites, candida, again from overindulgence of sugar and refined carbs. So we really need to stick to a whole foods diet, a lot of fiber, and make sure we introduce some cultured foods as well as probiotics to increase that good gut bacteria. So things like kefir, yogurt, make sure that they have active live cultures without sugar. And things like tempeh, which is a fermented soybean, miso paste, things like apple cider vinegar. If it has "with the mother" on the label, that means that there's a live culture in that apple cider vinegar. You can actually take a tablespoon of that and some water before meals, especially carb meals, high carb meals, to help the digestibility and adding good bacteria to that gut lining so it doesn't get stripped away from these sugars and yeast that are in your gut. So I hope this information is helpful to you, and you also now understand the connection between our gut health and our brain health and how very important it is. Tune in again for segments on simplifying health and nutrition, attaining health one bite at a time with Linda Curry. Thanks for listening.